How big is too big for an iPad? I'm iCave Dave, and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you. And if you want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours every weekday at 12 UTC, like this video, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. We are going to have a little channel update before we get into the main story about the iPads, but here we go. The news is pretty quiet right now, partially due to Apple's lockdown on leaks. So I would love to try some new stuff on the channel. So if you have a question, we will still do iCave answers like we do now by asking down in the comments with the hashtag. But you could also tweet me a video question. So if you want to ask me your question yourself on the show, I would love to include some of those this week. So don't be shy. It's at iCave_Dave on Twitter, and you can find me over there. Next up, I'd also love to see some of your setups, so if you have a nice desk or a unique setup, I'd love to do some setup reviews too, as these aren't super common for the Mac. Again, you can send them on Twitter or email me, david@sangwells.co.uk. Now, what I don't want to do is have to kind of reduce the number of shows that we do, because I really like doing the daily show. Yes, it's a bit of a challenge sometimes. Yes, I've missed the occasional one. We missed one last week. But other than that, it's only when I've been unwell or one of my children's been unwell that we have missed them. So I don't want to reduce the number of shows. If anything, I want to do more shows. But I need your help to get us there. But also, if there is anything else that you would like me to do on this channel to cover, then let me know. Marcin, don't worry, I have still got your G4 video on the way using the Sunflower iMac. So, all of that being said, let's tuck in. So this channel started out as living on iPad, and it started out during lockdown because I wanted to see if I could do everything I used the Mac for, basically using the iPad. Specifically the 5th generation base iPad with its 9.7-inch display that goes right back to the first iPads that Steve introduced on stage. And that first iPad was also the first instance of Apple Silicon, the first A-series chip from Apple, which was the A4, and it actually came out in the iPad before it came out in the iPhone 4. Fast forward to today, and the range of iPads has grown quite substantially. We have a 7.9-inch iPad mini, a 10.2-inch iPad, a 10.9-inch iPad Air, and then an 11 and 12.9-inch iPad Pros. That's quite a range for a tablet, and it could be about to get bigger in more ways than one. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman reports that Apple is working on a larger iPad Pro in the 14 to 16-inch range, so I guess like 15 inches then. For now, we'll call this the iPad Pro Max, but I have to ask, why though? Full disclosure, I've never actually owned a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, but from the limited time that I've handled it in the Apple Store, I think it is already too big. Now, I understand that this is not really a hot take, because Sam has talked about this on iUpdate, and I pretty much agree with what Sam said. With the 12.9-inch on a keyboard and trackpad case, it's a great laptop-style experience, but macOS is a better OS for that laptop style of working. When you take it off the case, it's a bit too big, it's a bit unwieldy, so it's not as great of a tablet or as a computer when you compare it with the far cheaper MacBook Air with M1. And I say far cheaper because if you want to get the iPad Pro and you want to get the keyboard and trackpad case, you are talking about like $1,450 for that setup, which is a fair chunk of change. The MacBook Air starts at $999 and is basically as capable. It doesn't have a touchscreen. It doesn't have the nice cameras on the back. Those are your kind of differences, but at the same time, like, most people don't use the cameras on their iPad that much. It tends to be for the occasional document scan and the occasional, like, oh, where my kids are doing something crazy and my phone's not in my pocket, so you grab an iPad if it's nearby. Now imagine going all the way up to 15 inches, and that's going to be a fairly crazy tablet. But that's not to say that there aren't people out there who would want it and make real good use of it. It maybe is actually the Pro version of the iPad Pro that the pros should be buying, because it would be a fabulous canvas for artists using the Apple Pencil, or for photographers that need to colour grade and review images out in the field, especially with that XDR display with up to 1000 nits of sustained brightness. It would also make a pretty awesome viewing experience for hotel hoppers who kind of work away from home a lot, as something to watch their content on, as well as getting some work done. So my guess is that perhaps the 11-inch iPad Pro is not much longer for this world, maybe discontinued with the iPad Air taking its place, and 120Hz ProMotion kind of dropping down to that level next year, because we also know that the processor is going to be capable of it. We know that the A15 processor, which was going to go into the iPhones, is going to be capable of doing ProMotion. It's going to be able to do that 120Hz display rate, so that actually kind of makes a bit of sense. So then the range would be the 12.9-inch and 15-inch iPad Pro and Pro Max, the 11-inch iPad Air, 10.5-inch iPad, and yes, I said 10.2 earlier, but I think it's going up to 10.5 this year. It looks like it's getting the old iPad Air 3 chassis, and then hopefully the iPad Mini will also be getting a bigger sized upgrade to around 9 inches later this year. But whether that iPad Pro will get some kind of software that can actually challenge the M1 hardware is anybody's guess. And I want to be clear here, I'm not blaming Apple, because what's gone into this, if they had just labelled it as an A14X, as they normally do, nobody would have been questioning it. The performance would have been identical to the M1. It might not have had a Thunderbolt connection, but it turns out it looks like the Thunderbolt connection is a little bit hobbled anyway. Doesn't appear to be using the full amount of speed that it would normally be doing, but it does come down to developers to develop apps that will use it. Now, there has been a lot of talk about needing to request to use more RAM than 5GB per application. Now, this is not writing a letter to Apple and saying, please can I have some more RAM, sir? This is a request to the system to basically say, look, this is why we're using it all, and this is why we need more. So things like Procreate being able to put more layers in, LumaFusion being able to render like higher quality files, all that kind of thing. So this is a request within the system and not like a write to Apple and say, please can I have some more RAM, sir? And the reason that they wouldn't just kind of throw it out willy-nilly is because if people don't have a limit on the RAM that they can use on the unified memory, then they will just use as much as they want, and they won't be worrying about optimizing their apps to use less memory, because as well, you don't want it to kick all of your other apps that you have running in the background out and offload them. You want it to still be snappy when you go back to using other apps too. So if there's a way to use the system more efficiently, that should be the first point of call, rather than trying to unlock more RAM so you don't have to do as much of the work. But let me know down in the comments, would you be interested in a massive 15-inch iPad? I don't think I would, but then Apple would probably do a really nice video about it, and I'd be like, yeah, we should definitely check one out. So we're going to get into the traditional iCave answers now, starting off with Alan B Unboxings and News, who asks, iCave answers, will Apple ever launch a gaming iPhone, gaming MacBook Pro and Air, and a gaming iPad Pro Max? So I would say, to be completely honest, that the current stuff is basically the gaming stuff for iPhone. So the iPad Pro with 120Hz display maximum refresh rate, I think that's very, very capable for gaming. The iPhones at the minute have basically the fastest, by a fair margin, mobile processor that's out there. So if you look at even Snapdragon's 888, the performance on that on single core is around about the same as an A12, and in multi-core it's around about the A13 mark, so it doesn't come close really to the A14 that we have in the iPhones at the moment. So in terms of raw horsepower, the iPhones are faster. So I guess we kind of already have our gaming iPhone. In terms of a gaming MacBook, I guess they could put different coloured LEDs in it, and then it would be. But again, this one comes down to support from developers. It's not about what Apple does, it's about what the developers that are making the games do, and are they going to port their game over to Apple Silicon and Metal rather than using just DirectX, which already exists for Windows, and that kind of does a lot of the work for them in terms of that optimization. Adding a new kind of protocol that you need to do it all to does add quite a bit of work, so we need to build up that user base first in order that we actually have an incentive for these games developers to come over to us. Not sure that there would be a gaming MacBook Air, that doesn't seem to make too much sense, but a gaming iPad Pro Max, yeah, absolutely. But I don't think Apple is going to release anything with a gaming name to it. But you never know, maybe there will be like an arcade edition for these things, and that's what they would probably call it if they were going to do it. Next up, Sharon B asks, iCave answers, which feature offers more protections against Facebook, Safari or the App Store? So I think this is a callback to yesterday's topic that we were talking about. Now, the iPhone is very secure in terms of use of the microphones and the cameras. I know you mentioned this in kind of the extended stuff for your question, was that does the Facebook app have access to those things? Only if you tell it that it can. And at the same time, Safari will be the same. It will check with you per website. But either way, if your microphone or your camera is active on iOS 14, you will get the indicators up at the top of the screen with an amber dot for the microphone being active and a green dot for the camera being active. So you are aware at any point if they are in use. Now, I think the reason that you were asking is because we were talking about yesterday the Facebook apps coming over to Mac potentially, and the fact that Facebook has almost said, no, don't bring the apps over because they have a bit more freedom on Safari. Now, Safari definitely has less restrictions on how you can be kind of tracked across the web, although it is still better than pretty much any browser out there. But this is not about it taking over the camera on your Mac. This is more about it using cookies for marketing purposes, so that when you look at something on the web in general, then those adverts can appear in Facebook for you. So it's that kind of thing. Then the second question, iCave answers, he also told a different caller, never ever enable Wi-Fi on a smart TV. He said that they have zero security features. Do you agree? So, yeah, smart TVs are probably one of the more vulnerable items in your house. Now, I don't know how a hacker would use a smart TV to get access to your house, although there are certain ones that do have microphones inside. For example, this one right here, because it's got Google Play and Hey Google built into it, I guess it does have microphones in there, and it could make use of them. This one isn't connected to Wi-Fi because it's literally just used as a monitor for me. That's all disabled inside it. But yeah, I guess there could be stuff like that where a TV could listen. I don't know who does and what kind of incentive they would have for it, but there have certainly been reports of hacks of these microphones, but as far as I'm aware, they did involve having someone physically have to get into the room and do some hardware hacks. So I don't think it's a massive security issue, but don't quote me on that, because I don't really know what I'm talking about when it comes to TV security. And James Apple asks, can we get a damn M1 in an Apple TV? If the iPad Pro can get it, then why the Apple TV can't get it? Because the previous 4K model got the A10X chip, which was also in the 2017 iPad Pro. I'd like for there to be an Apple TV 4K box that had console-like experiences that can then break the cycle of Apple TV curse on somebody not buying it over their smart TV that has the Apple TV app built into it. Hashtag iCave answers. So if you're looking for console level performance, the M1 ain't going to cut it for a TV box that's going to be for like playing AAA games. It's good, it's not console level good. So the consoles will definitely have, I think they have somewhere around 5 teraflops of processing for the graphics. Don't quote me on these numbers, but I have a feeling that the M1 has about 2.5, so it's about half as much. So you know, it's not designed for that. That's not what the M1's for. It's a multi-purpose chip that can do all of these different things. That being said, at this point, we don't have the games that would challenge it anyway, so that's not a huge problem. I do think that Apple is going to have something on the horizon for gaming in the lounge, in and around the home. Don't know if they would do it that way, or if it's going to be more of a case of your Mac handling the processing and it streams to your Apple TV, like with Xbox and what Xbox can do with home streaming. I think it's going to be probably more likely to be something like that than actually having all the hardware in the Apple TV. Or you could do something with your phone, where your phone becomes a controller. It's still doing the processing that goes onto your TV, but you're waving it about, so you're not actually looking at it. Now, they are going to need to bring the latency down a little bit on AirPlay, because it is still very slightly laggy. It's just behind what you want to do. Hopefully they'll fix that, and then we wouldn't actually need that much processing power in the TV, although I think it will come eventually. So okay, that's it for today's show, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, see if you can send me a video question over on Twitter, or if you've got a cool Mac setup, and it doesn't even just have to be Macs, it could be iPads, it could be your own Apple ecosystem if you've matched it up nicely, or you've got interesting accessories that tie everything together. I would love to see any of these things, so hit me up and let's get some interesting interaction going with you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.